Lois Lowry is a 1993 children's dystopian novel, and many people remember reading it very young. But what would be interesting is if we introduced it into a young adult literature class so that we could look at various topics which young adults themselves face every day. There is a huge focus in the book on what is called the release, in which a newborn fails to thrive, an elderly person has lived a full life, a crime has been committed and the person must disappear. The release is basically a code word for death. And all teens struggle with the idea of what death is and why death comes about and where death comes from. I don't think that's discussed enough. It's played out. You see movies and TV shows and video games in which people die, but nobody really talks about why people die or what causes death or what comes after death if an individual believes that there is something after that. It would be interesting to talk about that in a classroom and see what kind of discussions could come out of it. Another subject is stirrings, these desires and wants and dreams and deep, deep, passionate feelings. And as we all know, teenagers are hormonally racing individuals tripping over their own quickly growing feet in a world that they don't quite understand. And it would be interesting to discuss this in a class to say, what do you feel? How does this make you react? Well, what brings about you this sort of feeling? And I feel as though these discussions need to be had because I don't feel as though teenagers believe that they are often listened to, genuinely listened to, even by their own peers, and this would create a sort of discussion and an understanding of humanity and how each individual person works and how we as a whole human race work together, which is a very important sort of topic that needs to be discussed more often. There's a lot of politics in The Giver as well. The government within The Giver is all-controlling. There is to be no sort of deviation from the standard. There is to be no individual or autonomous thought. It's almost like Nazi Germany or Russia under the rule of Stalin. And you really could look at the political setting in The Giver and then look at Ukraine or Russia or North Korea. That would be a very interesting subject that you could get into. All sorts of different social justice or political freedom discussions. It would be something worthwhile having. Lastly, what I noticed that was the most offsetting, but what you could have wonderful discussions on, is in the book, the main character states that there was a time when flesh was many colors. Obviously, that has since passed, and so the question is, did genetics blend together to create a superior race, or was one race chosen out of all of them and the rest just died, disappeared, was killed off? That would bring a lot of really hard to talk about subjects into a classroom. Particularly, I feel as though if it were an inner city classroom, this would be a very sore note to hit. Not with the intention of being offensive to anybody, but white individuals don't have as clear a grasp and understanding of racial prejudices as any other race, because they don't really suffer the consequences of being any other race. They are white. If you had an inner city class with a mix of Latino and African American and white and Asian and any sort of European exchange student, that would be an interesting discussion, because then you could really bring about the fact of, no, this happens. In fact, you did it by accident yesterday. Here's why. Here's all the history. Here's what's going on today. Look at Trayvon Martin. Look at Brown. Look at all these other things that in our society, race is made to be a big issue. Should it be a big issue? Why is it a big issue? Hopefully in the future we will all be able to get over the notion of race and just see each other as humans. But in The Giver, that obviously did not happen. Why do you suppose that is? It would be a very tough discussion to have. But I feel it is a necessary discussion to have, particularly in today's time in which it seems there has been so much violence against everybody. If we can teach the younger generations that there is no reason for such violence, just based off of the color of someone's skin or the slant of someone's eye, then I feel as though, as an educator, we would have made a great triumph. In conclusion, I feel as though The Giver is an excellent book to have in a young adult classroom and to be taught in a literature setting in which heavy discussions can take place, moralistic values can be discussed, and politics can be freely put out on the table and examined.